episode 102 of Strange Brow Radio. I'm your host again, Tobe Johnson, and this part 2 episode, which if you heard episode 101, you know that we talked to extended experiencer Pat Mccray, and his wife was in the background chiming in. Well, episode 102 is an addendum to that. So today we talked to Robin Mccray, Pat's wife, as well as Pat. And, well, who knows better about extended Experiencer of Sasquatch Interaction than actual extended experiencers, which I believe they are. So we're going to delve into Robin's experience and go there. Don't forget to check out Feral by Aaron at Etsy, Alchemy Sound Tools at Feral by Aaron, E-R-Y-N. The holidays are approaching. Make them count with Feral by Aaron. All right, more on this interview. We'll be right back. All right, so before we get into mainly Robin McCray's perspective, we, as I said, heard from her husband Pat initially, and this interview is going to be probably about 75% of Robin's perspective as an extended experiencer. But before I go into more detail about what you're going to hear, I wanted to mention my new wood watchers. They are up for sale. In fact, they're up for auction at present. Here, this episode will come out a couple days after this auction was placed, mainly on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and some other sites there. But this was the initial real wood watcher I made. It's a project I've been working on for the last month, and they will be for sale, in perpetuity. And so what is one of one will be one of many, hopefully down the road. And so if you'd like to make a bid on that, you can, or you should be at this very moment here. I did post something about it up on the Patreon site for members here with an added bonus note, attached to the original price. Now, these cost a fair amount of money to build, and they take, over a week to knock one out from beginning to end. So the price is up there a ways for a lot of people, and I understand that. But if you're interested in a wood watcher and you are a Strange Brow member, an extra member at $3, or a reserve member, I will knock off the price for you. So they retail for $6.99. They're almost 2.5 feet long. They're just, I put as much quality and time into building them as possible. Foam, latex, all those things take time and money. So they are $6.99. But if you'd like to get one yourself for Strange Brow Radio Extra members, you can get one for $5.75. And if you would like one as a Strange Brow Radio Reservist member, which is your $6 monthly Patreon member, you can get one for $5.25. And that's as cheap as I can get them. But I appreciate all you guys sticking around on patreon.com. Unfortunately, that doesn't include shipping, which, is going to be around $100 to have this thing shipped to you. That's just based upon the postal system and the size. So down the road, I may make something, more affordable for people. It would have to be quite a bit smaller and probably a little bit less detail in this. But if you want something, if you want the wow factor of Bigfoot in your she shed or man cave, or to surprise somebody underneath the Christmas tree. As I said before, this isn't going to be something Santa could even easily slip down the chimney. So it is quite extensive, and you can take a look at it in all its detail, of course, up at patreon.com, which I'm not quite sure whether or not people check their email at the Patreon website. So let me know that you're getting all the posts that I put up at Patreon. If you haven't seen it there, then just contact me directly or go to the Wood Watchers Facebook page, which is connected right now to my personal page at Facebook, Tobe Johnson, and there's links to how to get a hold of the specs of what these wood watchers look like. And they take, like I said, about a week to build. So if you want one before the holidays, now is the time to get your order in, and first come, first serve kind of deal. All right, that's it for promoting the wood watchers. Now back to the interview. Robin Mccray is mainly our guest today, and we were doing a video chat here as well as uploading some photographs via mainly my smartphone, but they didn't join me on video chat. It's mainly a conversation, an audio conversation yet again here. So I will try to get some pictures posted as well with this interview. I think we got some pictures up regarding the chalky white handprints. And as you can see, we move away from the chalky white handprints, which, if you listen to that episode, we found out that they think that that's powdered sugar, which is unbelievable that you would have a Sasquatch raiding your cupboard here. But maybe that was powdered sugar that we saw in Cottage Grove, because, as you may or may not know, I've seen these chalky white handprints before. So interesting to learn. Fascinating episode with Robin Mccray. And, well, let's get to it. With me now is Robin and Pat Mccray. Hello, Robin and Pat.
Hi, how are you today?
Hi.
Great.
Hi, Tobe.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Thanks again for coming on the show here. Now, just to re-explain to the audience how we met here regarding the photographs that were posted of chalky white handprints. People that listen to this show know my relationship with an extended experiencer down in Oregon, a house that I lived at, where we found many handprints. We found lots of subtleties and what I would call major sign. And as an extended experiencer Sasquatch interaction, one of the stranger things that we found were these chalky white handprints. And they seemed to follow me from Oregon to Washington. I've only found a couple other people on, or, I would say 2 other people that have said these chalky white handprints that infuse themselves into objects also infuse themselves into people, because I found one atop my head one morning, which is an interesting story I'll say for another day. But when I saw your particular photographs, I got a hold of you immediately, and to my surprise, the story is even better than maybe what I was going to explain it as. And so I said, you know what, we need to have this conversation full bore here instead of me in my car with my dictaphone. So we scheduled a date to sit back and have this conversation. And just so you know, part of the conversation has already been aired, and that would have been Pat's point of view with me and Robin in the background. So they've already heard from you a little bit, Pat. We're going to come back to you because we only know a certain portion of your story, but you said that your wife, Robin, has had experiences long before you yourself, since she was a child. And Robin, I want you to take us back to the beginning of how this all started for you, and just give us a little taste of what you'd experienced early on.
My craziness?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember when they weren't around. Like, I remember my mom still has stories about how when I was learning how to speak, the first thing I would talk about is my friend that was tall and hairy that followed me everywhere. And my mom assumed it was an imaginary friend. By the time I was, I want to say between 3 and 4, back then it was safe for you to let your kids go out and play. And we lived in a subdivision, and at the end of my road, which is only a couple houses away, were all these dirt mounds. And we would go down there and play in the dirt mounds and make castles and ride our bikes and everything. Only when I would go down there, there would be 3 or 4 Bigfoot that would come and stand in the tree line, and they would mind speak. I mind spoke before I learned how to talk. And so I didn't understand that that wasn't everybody's world. And then as I, would say to my mom and dad, at first, they never said anything negative to me about it. I was very blessed. They didn't understand it, but they didn't, knock it down either. And I would be at home as a child. I'd look out my window and I'd see something, and of course, by the time I got mom and dad or anybody, it wasn't there anymore. And they just have always been there. I don't know what life is like without them. No matter where I go, no matter what I do, they show up. And so as I got older, it just was a continuation, but nobody knew about them. Like, I was talking to my mom and dad about stick structures and Bigfoots and hearing them talk in my mind and ETs and UFOs, and I was 4 years old. They didn't even have it out in books back then. And so, after a while, I just quit telling everybody because everybody would say, would laugh and they'd make a joke about it. They were never mean, but, they weren't really taking it seriously. But as I got older, they would mind speak and they'd tell me things, and there's no other way I could have known it. I was called out of my house. They had me back then. I didn't know as much as I know now. Otherwise I wouldn't have gone. But I was in my 20s and I was at home with my kids and I was by myself, and they wanted me out in these woods. And I'm like, I don't even know where I'm supposed to go, but I knew I had to go, that it was absolutely imperative I go. And so I got a babysitter. I went out, walked 3 miles into the darkest, deepest woods I've ever been in. Like, I was driven there. I had a friend that went with me, and I promptly ditched him because I knew they didn't want him there, and he insisted he was going. Went to a section of woods that really was almost impenetrable. You couldn't get in it, and they were mind speaking, going, hurry, come in before, your friend comes. And I'm like, I can't get in. And they said, all you have to do is walk up to it. I walked up to it, and it was like, I felt like I went through a suction. Next thing I know, I'm standing inside this wooded area in an area that was like a tube. And I followed this tube, and I'm like, what am I doing? This has got to be the most insane thing I've ever done. It's pitch dark out. It's like 2 a.m. and I'm in this tube. I know I went into some type of a portal. I had to, because you couldn't get in. It was impossible. And I turned and I looked to my left, and there was this people, they see all these little teepees that they make, and everybody says, oh, that's where they live. No, it's not. Those are temporary. Those are for a number of reasons. That is not where they live, I promise you. But when I went in there, it was like a giant, it reminded me of Big Bird's nest. It was built 4.5 feet off the ground with branches, logs, debris, whatever. You could have parked 2 cars in this thing, and it had a top to it. It looked like those Easter eggs that we had as children where you looked inside and there was a picture.
Right.
Only it was all branches woven, and it was raining outside, and that was airtight. I mean, there was no rain coming in, and you could have put 2 cars in this thing. It was so big. I could not have climbed in unless I went through and climbed it. I could not have gotten in. There's no way I could have stepped up into it. It was just too high. And I turned, and as I turned and looked back to my left, there was a male, a female, and a small child, a little girl that was there. And they mind spoke with me until we heard my friend calling me because he couldn't find me. And they told me I had to leave. And I said, I don't know how to get out because I don't know how I got here. And they laughed. And they said, just go back where you came in. So I went back where I was standing in there, and I leaned up against it. Next thing I knew, I was back outside again. And I'm like, this, I just kept getting more and more and more things would happen. And I had an incident where one had gotten into the house, only that one wasn't nearly as pleasant as the one that gets in here. He really destroyed a lot. But, I just, everywhere I go, they've been around. It's just been part of who I am. In fact, that's how I met Pat. He was having experiences as well, and we ended up talking on the phone for almost 2 years before we met, and we've been together ever since. Like, there's nobody else that could handle my life other than Pat. None. There is just too many crazy things.
Right.
In fact, when I get done tonight, when I get done tonight, I'm going to be out in the woods yelling at somebody because we were laying and we were in bed last night, and I have an animal rescue, and I have 2 rescues that are in 2 different kennels out in my front yard. And the one is completely feral, and she had gotten out. Somebody had let her out the other day. And by somebody, I mean somebody tall and hairy, because they've done this before. And so she's been running around my front yard for the last 2 days. She doesn't leave the yard normally. And we had a stuffed bunny that was in our house that the other rescue dogs play with, because those two can't come in yet. And all of a sudden, this rescue, or the stuffed bunny that was for the rescue, was out in the front yard, which is amazing to me considering none of us had ever taken it out there. And the one that had gotten loose was playing with the stuffed bunny. And I thought, okay, the last time she did this, it took her 3 or 4 days, and she went back in her kennel on her own. I'm laying in bed last night, and I hear this barking, and I go outside, and now both of them are loose. So Pat comes out. We put them both back, or put the one that is very easily caught back in his kennel, and we go back in. We lay down, and it's not even an hour later, and all of a sudden, I hear this commotion outside, and I'm looking. I can see out my bedroom window to this kennel, so I can watch them whenever I need to. And I see this big white head and shoulders above the dog kennel. And that's a 6-foot tall kennel. And I see all this white hair. And I'm like, okay. So I grab my glasses thinking, you know, because I don't care how many times you see them. It's like the first time every time. And so I grab my glasses to even make sure that that's what I'm seeing. And I'm like, you know, the dog is white as well, but the dog doesn't levitate 6 to 8 feet off the ground. And I'm like, that is too big, and it's got too much hair. And I basically what I saw was the back shoulders, back of the head, the neck, like probably from the shoulder blade up. And it was bending down into the bushes, and then it would stand up and it'd look around and it'd bend back down again. And then I see the dog was in the bushes and comes running out of the bushes. So I'm like, okay, great. So he was out there for I don't know how long messing around the kennel. And they do that a lot, so I wasn't panicked about it. Pat and I went to do a rescue for some animals this afternoon, and we come back, and the kennel door has been kicked in. The lock is still on it. The handle is still down, so it shouldn't have been able to be opened, but it wasn't opened out. It was kicked into the inside of the kennel. And now both dogs are gone, and the stuffed bunny. So we need to have a conversation. They used to do this about a year ago to some other ones I had, and I went out there. I go out there and I use the mom voice, and I get all mad,
Right.
and I go out there, and they left the other ones alone after that. And I thought we were going to be fine with these two, but apparently not.
Right. Okay, I want to get a couple questions out here over some of the things that you brought up, and then I want to get to the dogs that are missing or the rescues here. You said earlier in your 20s you got called 3 miles out into the woods, correct?
Yeah,
Okay, and you brought a friend along with you?
I did. He was a friend of our family's,
Mm-hmm.
and he just happened to call to check on me that night because he knew I was home alone with the kids. I had 5 children at that time. And he was checking on me, and I said, oh, I'm just getting ready to go out the door. And he said, where are you going? Like, this is the middle. What are you doing? Because at this time it was like 11, 12 o'clock. I said, I've got a sitter coming over, and I need to be out in the woods tonight. And I didn't tell him why. And he's like, I'm not going to just let you run around. I lived in Michigan. I was born and raised in Michigan. And he's like, you know, we've got cougars and bears and coyotes and wolves, and you want to go walking in the woods at night. I don't have a gun. I never carry a gun. And he said, if you're going, I'm going with you. And he said, I'm going to bring a handgun because I'm not letting you walk around out there by yourself. I said, okay. Well, the last thing the Foots want is a handgun around, and they didn't want him there to begin with. So he's like out in the woods with me. I didn't have a flashlight. I didn't have anything. And he had a flashlight. He had a handgun with him. And I pretty much ditched him. Like, he was walking one way and I cut back and went around. I mean, I didn't know where I was going. They were telling me, turn here, go here, do this, do this. And it was really weird because I felt like I knew where I was going, even though I didn't. You know, I know more now. Back then, this was back in the late 90s. Or no, late 80s. So back then, you know, I didn't realize that they were making me go that way. You know, basically we're kind of like puppets at times. I was just like, you know, I just felt this need to go there. And that really, now I know it wasn't the case, but you know, they didn't hurt me. They were very sweet. They were, you know, I read energy and I do a lot of energy work, and their energy was fantastic. You know, the good ones have a deeper level of love than we can even comprehend. You know, the bad ones are lethal. Don't get me wrong.
When you said
and I've
earlier,
dealt with them
Robin,
too.
sorry to interrupt. When you said earlier, Robin, there was this feeling of suction and you went into a tube. Describe that
Yeah, it was
moment and
very
what
fast.
happened to the male counterpart with the gun at that point.
He didn't know where I was. He was off looking for me, and he was like maybe a half acre away. And I went up there, and I just remember, I don't remember a ton about it. I just remember them telling me to come closer to the woods, come closer. And I'm like, I can't get any closer, and I can't get in. Like this, the bushes and the trees were woven. Like you could not walk in it. I don't know of any human being that could have walked in it unless you're breaking branches and tearing down trees to do it. And I'm like trying to look through these bushes, and they're like, just come closer, just come closer. And I'm like, I can't get any closer than what I am. And next thing I know, I just felt like something pulled me. And next thing I knew, I was on the inside. It was in a blink of an eye. I mean, they've asked me to go into portals before, and there's a couple that Pat and I are extremely close with, and I trust them with my life. They've saved my life 3 or 4 times now. And I asked him, and I said, you know, is this safe? And he said, no. Your bodies are 3-dimensional bodies. They're not made to go through a portal. We can't promise you'll be okay. You know, we just can't promise that. But we want you to come with us. And I said, like, you know, I'm a mom. Now I'm a grandma. I can't be doing that. So I didn't. But when I looked back on this particular incident, that's exactly what happened.
Okay,
I mean,
since there's been very few people that have come forward and described and done what you've done as far as possibly entering a portal, I just want to break this down bit by bit here. When you get to the point where you're up against the woven limbs and you can't go any farther, and you find yourself being pulled into these limbs,
it was
what?
very subtle. It wasn't like a suction cup ripped me through there. It was a matter of, I just felt like something was having me lean towards and pushing me up against the bushes, like it would have, you know, chest to chest with these bushes. And then when that happened, I don't, you know, other people have asked me, what did you see? You know, other than a little bit of silvery specks, that was all I saw. It was so fast. I do know people that have gone into portals or have said they've gone into portals or put one arm in a portal or whatever. And my experience was very fast. It was like a blink of an eye. And I don't know to this day how I was standing where I was standing. I didn't go through the bush that I knew of.
I want to break down silvery specks. What do you mean by that?
Almost like a swirl, just like a swirl.
Okay.
You know how sometimes if you're really dizzy, you see the silvery specks in front of your eyes?
Yes.
That's all I remember seeing. But like I said, I can't tell you how long it was. I didn't have a watch on. So I can't tell you how long it took to happen. You know, I've had missing time before on and off for various, you know, different abductions, not from the foot, but other things. And so I can't tell you how long it took. It felt like a blink of an eye. But to tell you, you know, it was 2 seconds, it was 5 minutes, I can't say because I don't know.
And your male counterpart, do you hear him actively looking for you, calling your name? What do we know about that moment?
I did up until that happened. And then when it happened, I didn't hear anything, a little bit of a humming noise, but that was it. And then when I walked in, at first, I didn't see them standing there. I walked right past the area they were standing because it looked like a deer run in there. And this tube that went around, there were deer footprints there. There were Bigfoot footprints there. And I'm like, if a deer comes running through here or a Bigfoot, there's nowhere for me to go to get out of the way. Because you could not, and I keep saying this, you could not penetrate these woods. You literally could not. And so if anything would have run through those tubes, I would have been toast because there was nowhere to go. And I went down, I kept walking, and I kept thinking to myself, you're an idiot. What are you doing? Like, I don't even know how you got here, but this is not where you need to be. And I kept walking and walking, and then all of a sudden I turned, and there was this huge, enormous nest. I mean, it was incredible. I've yet to see anything like it since then. And I don't know how long I was in there staring at it, and I heard movement, and that made me turn back to my left towards the direction I had come, and they were just standing there.
Okay, and what kind of meeting did you have with them at that point?
All I remember, what they've let me remember, because I think people need to understand, they will take away any memory you don't want to have. And it doesn't mean that you never had it. It just means you're not going to be allowed to remember it. What I remember was then telling me that, they had wanted me here, that it was important that I know that I was there. They wanted me to see where they were at, that they trusted me with that secret, that nobody was to know, and to keep people away from there. And it wasn't my property. I mean, I could even get in there. I don't know how they would think anybody else could, but they said they just wanted to see me. And as Pat knows, this is something that has happened quite a bit. We get them in the backyard that want me to come out. It has to do with the energy that I radiate. And so they started to talk, but then my friend, I heard him all of a sudden yell for me. And I knew he was getting closer to where we were. And the female was the one that said, "You're going to have to go because your kind can't find us here." And I said, "Okay." And they said they wanted me to know that I would be coming back, but I don't ever remember. If I've ever gone back there, I don't have any memory of it. And that they would see me again. And so I said, "How do I get out?" And they pointed back.
They meant dream state.
Yeah. Well, I get pulled out. You get pulled out a lot too, babe.
Now, wait, say that again, Pat.
Dream state.
Okay. Dream state. Gotcha.
The dream state is as real as when you're awake. Mm-hmm. You can be injured there. You can be killed there. I've had my arm broken there. Pat and I have both woken up with cuts and bruises for various things that we've done. But that's another thing. But anyway, so I walked back over to where I had come in at. And I remember the little girl. She was so cute. And I remember her giggling. And it was all mind speak. Like, I never heard them verbally. I've heard them verbally speak before. That I've heard. But
now, were these familiar
case,
voices to you, Robin? Were these, since you've been having telepathy and mind speaks at such an early age, is this a family group you knew?
No. Well, I'm not going to say I didn't know them. Since I had been at that house, I knew they were there. Like, I can feel the energy from them even if I don't see them. If they're around, I'll pick it up. Pat does the same thing. And I knew they were there. And we had various situations where there was no doubt they were there at my house many, many times. And I had actually had one that had gotten in the house. I wasn't home when it got in the house, but I found the remnants of my house when I got back. But, I used to talk to them. I used to mind speak to any of them that would talk as long as they felt good. If they felt bad, then they were not going to talk to me because I wasn't going to deal with them. But if they were kind and they seemed, they had a good energy about them, I would mind speak as much as they wanted. And so they were always running around my yard. And so these three, I don't necessarily, I'm not going to say that I remembered hearing their voices before, but I'm sure where the location was at, I'm sure it was the same clan that normally is at my house. They seemed to know me. I didn't recognize them, but they sure seemed to know me. And so when I went back up to that one spot, I don't know how I got out. I can still remember looking at this thinking, I can't fit through here. I don't know how I'm supposed to get out here. And then I just remember being on the other side of the bushes again. And my friend ran up to me and he said, "Are you okay? Oh, you're okay." And I said, "You know what? I think we need to go home." And he said, "You threw the biggest fit to get me out here. Now you want to go home?" He said, "I want to go investigate more." And I said, "No, you know what? I'm really tired. I got to go home." But he said, when I went out there, he said, whatever was going on, he said, "You didn't act like yourself." And he didn't, at that time, I hadn't told him anything about the Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to tell only a few people because I didn't want anybody to hurt them.
Right.
And he said, "You just acted like a woman possessed." He's like, "You were you knew where you were going." He said, "I don't even understand." He said, "You didn't act like you." He said, "You were quiet. You didn't say a whole lot. And we were going."
Now, earlier you were talking about mind speak and how if they're in a foul mood, you're not into talking to them. How do you shut this gift off?
I just don't respond. I can block it. Pat knows how to block it. Like I said, I read energy. It's one of the things that I do. Pat's gotten really good at doing it as well. And they're not all good. They don't all want to be your buddy. They don't all want to be your friend. There are bad ones, just like you have to understand. I worked with Melba Ketchum on the DNA study, and they are a human hybrid, which they had already told me what they were before I ever met Melba. So it wasn't a shock for me. I already knew it. But, just like with our people, there's good and there's bad. Not everything is nice, not everything is evil. And when you feel, even with a regular person, you can feel a different energy from somebody that's not pleasant or that is mean or nasty or whatever. And it's the same thing with them, and only their energy is much stronger. And so if I pick that up, I'm not dealing with them. That's all the way it is. Because you don't want other entities. I mean, the Bigfoots are the least of the things that are out there. You don't want these bad things attaching to you, that you don't want them following you home, because they're up to no good. They're not there to be nice. So I just don't respond. And I know how to move my own energy. So does Pat. So if they keep wanting to get in my head, I have no problem pushing energy out around me to blast their little butt so they back off.
Now, do they keep tabs on you, Pat, as well as Robin? Either one of you can answer this. Let's go with Pat. Regarding your contact with other people that are interested in the subject matter of, let's just say, learning and hearing about them, like myself and the audience here, do they guide you who to talk to and who not to talk to?
Yeah, I don't work there anymore, but I used to work as a delivery driver. And there was, I told maybe probably a couple people over there about big, Sasquatches and stuff like that. One of them he told me, he says, well, hey buddy, I got some advice for you. Don't tell anybody. They'll think you're crazy, And the other guy that I told, he is pretty interested, and I really believe the Bigfoot, they wanted to, maybe get to know him. And go ahead.
No, go.
Well, I mean, I just felt that. I mean, you feel that, like you just, it's hard to describe. I mean, you'll just feel that, well, I think, they really like him, and, they want to basically get to know him, that type of thing.
Robin, for this recruitment process of fielding out who they're going to approach and talk to and who they're not going to, I would imagine they would have beyond foresight to who's going to be the best fit for them and their message. Is there a message, and are you guys a part of delivering that message?
Kind of, yeah. Years ago, and I'm sure most people in the Bigfoot world know Dr. Igor Borsteff. Igor is a very close friend. He's like family to us. And I met him because he had met somebody that I knew, and at that time I didn't tell very many people that they were at my house. And I was having daily interaction. I mean, we were talking at this particular place that I was living at. They walked around uncloaked 90% of the time. It just wasn't a big deal. And he had wanted to come to the house. So he came to the house, and he ended up staying 10 days. But when he left, he asked me if I would go to Russia and speak at the International Scientific Conference, which I did. They paid to fly me out there to speak. They were absolutely wonderfully gracious and kind. It was a great experience. But I thought what happened in Russia stayed there. And when I got home, I got pulled around in customs, and they said, oh my gosh, you're the girl with the Bigfoot. And I was like, dumb. I'd never expected all the press or that it would come back here. So I came home, and there was good press. There was bad press. It went up and down. And I was like, you know what? I don't need this. I'm just a mom who has a ton of animals and plays with her Bigfoot. That's what I do. I don't need this. I'm not doing any more conferences. I'm over it. I did a couple little ones for some people that I know, and I just said, forget it. I'm not doing it anymore. And about almost 2 years now, I turned down podcasts. I turned down conferences. I did all that. I didn't want to do it. It had nothing to do with me. My thing was working with them. And all of a sudden I got put in a situation where now I'm out in the conference things again. And I told Pat, I said, if they want me doing it, I'll do it, but only for them, because I don't need it for me.
Right.
You know, I mean, I work with a lot of people that hear about me from somebody or another and will contact me and then just want to download their information or, you know, you help me work with my foots or whatever. I'm more than happy to do that. Pat does that as well. But I don't need to be in the public eye. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. And so we asked them and I said, you know, what is the deal? All these people are calling me for, you know, conferences, and one particular person in particular who's really turned out to be a great friend and gives me a platform to say whatever needs to be said. And they're like, no, you need to go. You have to speak for us. You have to be a voice. You have to let them know what we are, what our culture is. You know, people don't realize they can read, they can write, they have the alphabet, they have a language, they can speak whatever language they want to. They can also mind speak. And they have their own culture. Now, their culture and their ways are not ours. And this is where the problem lies. And so it just kind of, I ended up put out there. I don't do every conference that comes along. I do them for certain people because I know they're trustworthy and I can say whatever needs to be said. And what I say actually comes from what they're telling me to say. And then that turned into a podcast here and there. And then Duke Sullivan got hold of me because Igor and Janice Carter and I did a podcast for him. And he's like, will you come back on separately and talk? So we've done a lot of those. So, I mean, I think Pat and I, we both, because Pat's done some of them as well. And, you know, they tell us what they want put out there. You know, I mean, we don't benefit from doing it. It doesn't hurt us other than, you know, some people can be cruel, but whatever. But we do it because that's what they want.
Okay. Pat,
you know,
are you in agreement with Robin about the culture aspect of Sasquatch? Are you both in agreement over what their culture is?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And what best describe their culture?
Basically, they've got rules and laws that guide their activities. Like they can't. One of them is basically they can't show themselves.
I mean, they do.
They do, but it's
one
a
of
big
the laws
thing.
tells them not to, but a lot of your clans are more open to it, and to select few people they do. I try to tell people, and I think Pat does as well, look at your Amish people. Okay, you have different sectors of Amish people that have different beliefs. Some believe in a certain amount of electricity, some don't believe in it at all. Some of them don't want to deal with people outside of their sector. You know, there's various things. And this is very similar. You know, certain clans are more relaxed in what they allow the clan members to do. Others are more structured. I think it just depends. I mean, and Pat and I both have talked to so many. I mean, we've got like 4 or 5 clans out here where we're at, but we talk to them all over the world. And, you know, it just, each one's different. They're individuals, you know.
Now, you know, the word clan has been passed around by us for a long time, describing units of them. Is that what they describe themselves as, having a clan?
Yes.
Okay.
They have to me, and I think it's to Pat as well.
What's that?
That when you're talking to them, babe, don't they call themselves the unit as a clan?
When they talk to me, like they'll get a hold of me. Robin basically can. They come and they want to be healed. Robin is a healer. There's such a thing as protocol among the Bigfoot, and a lot of them feel that with the protocol, they can't talk to her.
Unless I give permission, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I still don't like it.
But what they do with the protocol, they contact me. Not all of them, but most of them do. Probably about 90% of them do. And
now,
then
Pat, did you say that they go to, I'm sorry to interrupt, did you say, Pat, that they go to Robin for healing?
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, so much of what we hear is that people go to them for healing, but they're actually coming to you, Robin.
Well, here's the thing. They can do healing because they have healed me before due to some other issues that went on. I ended up in intensive care, and it wasn't due to a Bigfoot. It had to do more with ETs than the Bigfoot. And I literally wouldn't be here had they not healed. The hospital had said, you know what, you're going to be in intensive care if you pull through probably for another 4 to 6 months, and then you're going to be in a regular hospital room for probably as long. I remember when they got there, you know, they can go in spirit form. They don't have to always be in physical form. And I remember, I've always talked to spirits and ghosts and everything else. And I remember laying in intensive care and ghosts standing over the top of me, and I couldn't hear them. And I thought, I'm in really deep trouble here because I've never not been able to hear them. And then I remember the Bigfoots, that we have a couple that we work with and some healers. And I remember feeling the energy of them there. And I remember feeling one touching me on both of my thighs, one on each side. And I was out of intensive care in 12 hours and home in 24. And to this day, the doctor has no explanation for it because I didn't even have time for medicine to kick in yet. You know?
Wow. Is
was
it your
in
instinct,
Pennsylvania.
Robin, that some of their abilities have rubbed off on you?
It has to. So I don't know. I do know I have a friend of mine, a very, very dear friend of mine that once told me and she knows so much. And she had told me, she said, some of the things that they do, you have to have one of us and one of them in order to make it work. So is that the case with some of the healing they have me do? I don't know. I didn't even know I could do it. It was a complete surprise to me, more so I think than anybody else. And every time I keep telling them I can't do it, they're like, yes, you can, just do it. And I'm like, I don't know how to do it. And their famous line for me is, when you need it, it will just happen.
Right.
And they're right. They'll need me to do something. And I'm like, I don't know what you want. What do you want me to do? I can't do it. And all of a sudden it just happens. It's like my body goes into, an automatic thing. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to step back again to the culture aspect, because that's just insanely interesting, because they must, to some degree, especially given the human attributes of them. Would you call them a type of human? Would you just call them Bigfoot?
Absolutely.
What do you call them?
I call them forest people. They're people. It's a fact. I understand 90% of the world has a hard time dealing with it. The truth is the truth. You can't change DNA. It is what it is. That study was so intense. And we're talking robotic arms were used. Tests were taken to make sure there was no chance of contamination. Members that worked with the samples turned in their own DNA so that they could make sure it wasn't on there. This thing is legit. The public never knew even 90% of what went on because there was so much hate going on. There was no point putting it out at that point. But they are a people.
And you're talking about the Ketchum study, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I had some of my samples tested. Igor turned in some of my samples as well as others from other places, and all mine came back, Bigfoot, which I already knew it was. I saw the individual that left the sample. But, the thing of it is the truth is the truth, and people can say it's not till the cows come home. I'm not going to argue with anybody. I mean, my thing is, believe what your own truth is, okay? I know what it is. I knew what it was before I met Melba, before the study. I had already asked them. I mean, if you want to know, just ask the source.
What was their opinion of the study? Did they have an opinion of the study beforehand?
That's how I met. No, I didn't. Here's the thing. I didn't know Melba. I didn't know her name. I didn't even know they were doing a study. I mean, when I say I went out and just hung out with my group, that's what I did. I didn't associate with Facebook. I didn't associate with other researchers. There was one person that I trusted that I will, till the day I die. He's just a wonderful man. His name is Robert Daigle from Michigan Bigfoot, one of the dearest people you'd ever meet. And I trusted him. And that was it. And he's the one that introduced me to Igor, who, of course, now I trust completely. He's when he's in the States, he stays with me probably 3 or 4 months. But, and I just hung out with my group. That's all I did. I didn't know any of these people.
Right.
They were the ones that came to me and said, you have to help us. And I said, do what? And they said, the time has come. People need to know what we are. And I said, okay. And they were the ones that told me to get hold of Melba. And I didn't know who Melba Ketchum was. I mean, like I said, I wasn't always on Facebook. I didn't know any of this stuff. And I was talking to a friend of mine that I trusted, and I told him, I said, I don't know who this Melba Ketchum is. And she said, you don't know anything about the study? I said, what study? So she told me about it, and I said, well, I need to get hold of this person because I'm supposed to help her, but I don't know how. I'm not a scientist. I don't know genetics. You know, I'm a housewife with a bunch of kids, animals, and Bigfoot. You know, what do I do? So she knew somebody that knew Melba and got the number. And I said, well, just give her my number and tell her I'm supposed to help her and I don't know how. I just know I'm supposed to. And she called me, and she is truly one of the dearest people. I mean, she's like a sister to me. I absolutely love her. And we had this long conversation, and I said, I don't know what you need me to do, but I'm in. And she said, I can use all the help I can get. I'm like, okay, but don't ask me to do anything scientific because I don't know how to do it. I mean, she's taught me a lot, but at the time I didn't know anything. And so she asked me about 6 weeks later, she said, Robin, you've never asked me what the study results were. Everybody and their brother is hammering on me to tell them the results that I can't release yet. And she said, you've never asked me. I said, I don't need to. I asked them a long time ago.
Right.
And so I told her, I said, you know, they said to me what they were. And I told her what they said. And she said, that's exactly what I got. And I said, there you go. You know, but I don't think I think more people are starting. They're trying to come out to people. Don't you think, babe, Pat? More and more people they're giving more information to.
Yeah, I think so. If you look on Facebook, and it seems like everybody's in the woods these days. But the thing is you don't find them, they find you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, get out of their houses. You know, you walk out your front door, you're in their house now.
The statement that you made earlier, Robin, about the time has come for people to know who we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
That seems counterintuitive to the fact that they need to be hidden from us.
They only need to be hidden from us.
How do I better understand that statement?
Well, because the reason they need to be hidden from us is because we keep trying to blow their heads off.
Right.
If people would quit trying to hurt them, they would be amazed. Now, there are habituators all over the globe, and I talked to some of them all over the globe, literally, and they have these wonderful ongoing nurturing relationships with them where they're not afraid to let them be seen. Okay, these are people that the Bigfoots call pure of heart, and most of your researchers know that term because the ones that mind speak with them, that's what they always tell them, you know, you're pure of heart, and that's what they look for. Now, it's obviously possible to live peacefully among them. Thousands of people do. There are people out there that have the most insane, wonderful contact. But what happens, and I'm not going to say all researchers because I have a lot of respect for a lot of the researchers out there. I do. They do things the right way. They're kind to them, and it's a respectful relationship. But you also get researchers that, and I've ran into a couple of them. I booted one off my property, that they don't care if they have a positive interaction. All they care about is they have an interaction. And if that means that they are intrusive, disrespectful, or doing things to piss them off, they don't care because all they want is that interaction. That is not somebody that's pure of heart, because what happens is you go into their world, you're out there with them, and you get too close to their children, or you're out there and they're hunting, or they're doing traditional rituals with the children, you know, to teach them things. And, you know, rites of passages or whatever. And you go in there and you interrupt them. And then a bad altercation happens. And then everybody's out in the woods wanting to kill the Bigfoot. But nobody seems to understand that you're out there bothering them. Leave them alone. If they will come to you, if they want to come to you, that is the thing. And it's okay to go out in the woods and have healthy interactions or go out and look at your stick structures. if you're being respectful, which I think the majority of the researchers are. I think we have some really top-notch researchers out there. There are no experts in that. I know I'm sure not an expert. And I know people that claim to be experts, and I'm telling you, in my opinion, there are no experts. But, you know, it's how you conduct yourself, you know, when you go out in their world.
But Robin, you and Pat are experts based upon the relationship that you have in a way that very few people have. So don't short sell your experiences here,
I appreciate
because a lot of
no.
people claim that they are experts and they don't have 5%, 1% of what you and Pat are describing, if it's true. But when it comes to the origin of them, you know, our origins are up for debate. What have they said about not only their origin, but our origin? And I'll defer that question to Pat.
Their origin, I've heard this from Robin, and I've asked them myself, and basically they said they came from the Star People a long time ago.
Yep. When I went out in the woods one day and I point blank asked them, and these were my top 3 guys that I trust explicitly. And I was like, okay, guys, I just want to know, because I've always been this huge animal lover. And when I was a kid, because they were all covered in hair, I just thought they were another one of the animals in the woods. I mean, I was a little kid. And then, of course, as I got older and I'm watching them do all these things, I'm like, I don't know any animals that can do what you're doing. And so I was just like, okay, really, what are you? Because at that point, I had met Igor and other researchers, and everybody had an opinion. And I was like, I just want to know what you are. And since you're talking to me anyway, I'm going to ask you. I mean, you're going to know where you came from. And they looked at me and they pointed towards me and they said, we are human like you. And then they pointed up to the sky and they said, and Star People. And I said, okay, there you go. Now, Melba's study, the only thing that's different there opposed to what I was told is, from a scientific standpoint, you cannot say that it's a star person DNA, because GenBank doesn't have that. So on the mother side, on the mitochondrial side, it came back human. The nuclear side is listed as unknown, which is what it should be listed, because nothing in the database matched what was in that unknown. So, you know, there you have it. What it is, I don't know, because there's nothing in the database that we have that matched it.
Okay, freeze on that comment there, and let's squelch a rumor that I heard about Melba's study here. I know a couple people that help the study along, and one of the things that I heard as scuttlebutt, and you may know more than most, is that Melba got caught using the word angelic DNA to describe that part of the study that you just alluded to. Was that the verbiage that you heard?
No, I remember when that rumor went around, and number one, she never claimed the DNA was angelic DNA, because again, we don't have that DNA to match it to.
Right, but would it be just a blanket term to describe something wonderful, something new, awe-inspiring, something other? No,
in my opinion, no, because in order to say it's angelic DNA, you can't do that. You have to have something to compare that to. If you don't have it to compare it to, the best you can say is unknown. And that's exactly what she said. I've asked Melba when I heard the rumor about it, and she has never lied to me about anything. And I will forever go to the wall for her, because I know what went on and I know the type of a human being she is. And I asked her about it, and she said, nobody has said they came from angels. Nobody said they came from angel DNA. She said, there are people that have made that claim, but she said, I'm a scientist. I have to go by the facts. The DNA on the nuclear side is unknown. There is nothing in any database that we have access to that it can compare to. That's why it is listed in the paper as unknown. That is why it will stay as unknown. She said, I would never go out and say that these are from angels, because you don't have any way to prove it. You know, she said that may be somebody's opinion, but she said, as far as a scientific fact, I will never claim as a scientific fact they have angel DNA.
But everything that you said here, Pat and Robin, regarding the fact that they say they came from the star people, do you take that as having connotations to something like that?
I don't know about, I'm not going to speak for Pat. I don't necessarily, because I also, unfortunately, well, sometimes fortunately, but most of the time, unfortunately, deal with a lot of ET stuff. And that is, unfortunately, something that the researchers that have a lot of contact with them eventually have to deal with as well. But an ET is not necessarily an angelic being. You know, I mean, they're also not demonic. Demonic comes from the underworld. ETs don't. Not that we don't have some that live in center Middle Earth and that kind of thing. But I don't feel that because that is unknown, or because they said they came from star people, I personally don't associate that with an angelic being, because I don't have enough information to put them in that category. I do know they are not demonic. I mean, I can tell you that, but you know, what type of a star person that they came from, I don't have any idea.
And they haven't said what type of star person they're from.
No, they never said. They just said star people.
Okay. And that's your instinct as well, too, Pat?
Well, they're watchers. What happened, what I heard, they were watchers, and they were with, watching along with the ETs, and basically and this is from a foot that I heard basically tell me the seeing what was going on to the human race was actually painful to watch, and they didn't want to be part of it anymore, and so they broke off from the ETs.
And I have to back Pat up on that, because back in probably, I want to say 2011 or 12, they told me the same thing. Actually, it's probably before that. It was probably back closer to 2006. I was told the same thing. They said, we have part of humanity in us. We're part human. We were not going to be part of it. And, there are ET groups that would like to get hold of them and remove them.
So
they
the parts
went against
that
them.
are them, the gene splicing that happened, however it happened, the hybridization, is it as simple to think that they're part primate, part human, part other? Is that what we're to think?
It's pretty much a 50-50, human and unknown. As far as the primate, we're part primate. No more so than us. From what they've told me.
The primate look, the primate attributes that are different than us, going down the physicality of them.
Well, and you have to understand that the ETs create a lot of hybrids. Now, I'm not saying that that's what happened with them. I'm not a scientist. I can't say that. I wasn't there. I'm not going to, mess with anybody's beliefs. I think everybody's entitled to believe whatever they do. And I also believe that everybody has different experiences, and they all should be respected for the experiences they had. So I don't trash other researchers. I don't say that they're wrong or not truthful. I don't do any of those things, because I don't share their experiences. All I can talk about is what I know. And what I know is that when it comes to dogmen and the lizard men, and yes, they're real. I have a picture of one in my backyard. And the thing of it is these are all hybrids. They are ET hybrids. Now, what the Foots meant when they said star people, I don't know. That's what they said. That was their verbiage, not mine. But I do know for a fact that the ETs do create hybrids. And, so you've got all these things. Like if they did a DNA test on a lizard man, my guess is it would come back lizard, human, and unknown, because they're bipedal. It was, I don't know that anybody's ever checked DNA on it, but I'm just saying, there's so many things. We have more things out in our woods that anybody could even comprehend. I mean, the Foots have given me mental pictures of various cryptid type things out in our woods I've never seen before. You know, and I'll say, what is this? And they'll say it's this or it's that.
Mm-hmm.
We were here one day, and I was looking off the front porch, and both sides of my properties have a huge tree line that go down it. And I looked through the trees, and I saw, I don't know what this thing was. I don't know what to call it. Never seen it again, but it was massive, and it was going through like a rabbit would hop, but the back of it was over 5 feet. The hair coat was not like a Dogman. It was not like a Bigfoot. It was short, cropped, and it had these huge ears on it, this weird looking head on it. And I watched it go through there, and then it cloaked. I was dumbfounded. I don't know what it was. I literally have no idea what this thing was. The legs were different than anything I've ever seen. I'm just saying, there's so many things out there. We have no clue. No clue. I get people that contact me, and the people that contact Pat, and they're like, have you ever seen this? And I'm like, no, doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, well, it's hard not to think that Bigfoot is just the ground floor. You know, it's one of the things that we all experience. You know, that's why we're talking here. I shouldn't say one of the things we all experience, but when you experience them, it's not as though there's not these other floors to go up and down on the elevator, the weird elevator, and check out these other phenomena that exist.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have a picture. The only thing I can think of is it's a cat person. I mean, I know her name is Amora or Arula. Sorry, Arula. I was out on my front porch taking pictures, and there's a certain way. If you take certain pictures a certain way, if anything's out there and cloaked, it'll show up in your camera. And I was taking random pictures, and this bipedal, probably 7-8 feet tall, with the head of a cat. You know. I mean, I don't know what it is. To me, it's a cat person. She was absolutely beautiful on film. But, I mean, you know, I didn't even know she was there. I have a picture of this ET-looking thing sleeping underneath a bush out there.
Okay, and these are things that you guys see with your own naked eye beyond camera, right? I mean, you've witnessed these.
No, these are, Pat and I have seen things. It's actually kind of bizarre because it's very disconcerting, because they'll cloak and then they'll start to uncloak and then they recloak. And Pat and I will be sitting here, and all of a sudden you see like a body part going across the yard.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know?
Freeze frame that. Describe that moment, seeing just, now say that again. You see just an appendage moving through space and time?
Well, yeah, and then they recloak. I mean, there's times we'll see the full body.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But there's also times where you'll hear something come crashing through the bushes and go running across the yard, and you'll see a thigh or an arm or a head, and then they recloak. We live out in the middle of the woods on a dirt road, and I went to go down the road one day, and it was nighttime, and I saw this deer run across the front of the road. So of course I stopped. I mean, you can only creep along on our road anyway. And it ran across, so I waited, and next thing I know, I didn't see anything at first, and it was a Bigfoot. It uncloaked, landed in the middle of the road, looked at my car, jumped back out to go back into the woods. It was chasing the deer. And mid into the jump, it cloaked again. And I was like, good Lord. I mean, I was in Michigan, and I was behind this car, and we were going down a road. It was out in the country, but it was a relatively busy wooded area, and this car ahead of me hit the brakes, and you could tell it clearly hit something. I mean, it absolutely hit something. And I saw this car hit its brakes. Excuse me, I have a bird that's having a temper tantrum. And it hit its brakes, and the car, actually the tail end of it, slid off to the side, and I saw the brush in the weeds in the ditch. You know, you could see where something had fallen in it, and then all of a sudden you saw it looked like a juvenile black Bigfoot do a drop and roll on the ground where they had hit it while it was cloaked. And so then it stood up and it started to run off and it recloaked. So, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the stuff you see is unbelievable. And Pat and I used to sit there and shake our heads and say, we're not crazy, right? But then we had people that, we're very selective about who is allowed to come here because of them.
Sure.
And then people that are here are like, we're sitting in the living room like, oh my God, I just saw a head. I just saw an arm in front of the window.
Uh-huh.
And we're like, yeah, okay.
Right.
I mean, we had one.
Well,
Go ahead, Pat. Robin, just to let Robin know, there's a little bit of feedback on your end. It wasn't there before the bird trouble, so I'm going to let you address that. Pat, what were you going to say?
That's what I'm doing.
I was sitting down in the living room, and I saw a Bigfoot right by the window. Now, he had, remember the afro Bigfoot?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. We saw one of those in Rondo,
right
too.
By the window. He was translucent. I could see through him. He was partially cloaked. And he was looking inside the window. I could see his face and everything, and his big afro and stuff. And it's, I saw that. I've seen. I was in Michigan. I was working for a delivery company, and I pulled up, and there he was. I saw him, and he was standing right there, and then both of us looked each other in the eyes, and right before my eyes, this is the craziest thing, he just disappeared. He cloaked, and he just like totally phased out. I mean, it's like, wow. I go, wow.
I had a young one. He wasn't young. He was, I want to say probably getting ready to be a teenager, but I've been very close to him for many years. And I was out in the side of my yard. This was before I met Pat. And we had a bunch of them out there that day. And my son was walking through some weeds coming towards me. So I was like, kind of like out there trying to guide my son, because we had one on one side, and then we had a red one that was doing the belly crawl through the grass. And that was the one I was concerned with, because they are pranksters. They have a wicked sense of humor, and it is not uncommon while they're doing the belly crawl to come up behind you, grab one of your legs, and just pull it out from under you. And I didn't want my son scared. So I was hollering to him, and I'm going, just come straight towards me. I'm keeping an eye on where everybody is. And I turned to my right, and he was standing right next to me. Bless his heart. I just love this guy. He is one of the sweetest Bigfoot. And he always followed me everywhere anyway, still does. And he was, fully uncloaked. He was in physical form. He was like less than 10 feet from me, and we weren't in the woods. We were standing out in the open inside yard. And I'm looking, I saw every square inch of him, and it was so amazing to me because he had such short hair on his head, and he didn't have any skin that showed. He had hair in his eyelash, hair on his eyebrows, on his eyelids, in his ears, everything. But his hair, it was like it was slicked back. And it wasn't that long. But, you wouldn't, I don't know how it grew the way it did, but it looked literally like it was slicked back. And then as it came up down his neck and his chest, his hair maybe got about 1 inch to 2 inches long. But he was standing right there, and I felt so guilty. I still to this day feel bad, because I was hollering to my son because I didn't want the red one to pull his legs out from under him and knock him on his butt and scare him. So I was hollering at him, and I scared the white one. And so he's standing right next to me, and I stood there for a second, and I looked at every single square inch of him. And because I was hollering to my son, it scared him, and then he cloaked right in front of me. And I felt so bad. I never, he always told me it was fine, but I always felt really bad because I scared him. That's why he cloaked. But we had a large male that had come in. I used to put, and I don't recommend this to people, but at the time it was just, me, myself, and I was kind of figuring things out by myself. And I had a feeding station. And it used to be at the back of our 10-acre property, and then I got tired of lugging it back there. They were coming to the house every night anyway, so I just put it up by the house. And I would go put their food and stuff out there. And I went out there one day, and this big male came in, and this one had actually the conial head, where they don't all have that. And he went up to get food out of the buckets, and he reached in to get it, and he turned around and saw me there, and he cloaked. But it was comical because the conial part of his head didn't cloak at first. It's like he was 3/4 of the way cloaked. It looked like a yarmulke bouncing through the woods. And I'm like, I can still see you. And eventually it did cloak, but it was pretty comical. I was like, this is crazy. Nobody would believe the stuff that goes on here.
Okay, let's break down cloaking, because there's a lot of discussion about it. It's something that we've experienced here. I haven't witnessed it myself, but the extended experiencers house that I was at have experienced it. What do we know about cloaking, and how can we physically describe this as best we can to people? What's actually happening?
Well, Pat, tell them, because they told you what it was.
It's a basically a redirection of light that comes in.
They bend the light.
They bend the light to where it's seamless. And they're seamless, and nobody can see them.
There's two ways they can do it. I mean, and that's absolutely right, because they'll tell you they bend light. But you can see it two different ways. You can have complete transparency where you don't know they're there. Actually, three ways. Where you can't see them. That's how when they do the counting coup, that's how they count coup on you so much, because you can't see them when they're doing it to you.
No, wait, now what is that?
Okay, counting coup, it's done for many reasons. Some of them will do it just because they think they're funny. Some of it's like, they're daring the other one to do it.
She's had it done to her, and I've had it done to me.
Yeah. And sometimes they do it as a rite of passage, with the younger ones.
Yeah. Basically
what it is they are completely cloaked, and they come up and they touch you. And you don't know they're doing it because you can't see anything. A lot of people that are in this field of research will feel like something's touched them. They're touching you. They used to come up and pat my hair. I have really thick hair. I always tell everybody I look like a Yeti. Mm-hmm. And they, especially back, in the early 2000s, I would sleep with my window open. As long as I didn't move my bed away from my window, they were happy. If I moved it away from my window, they pounded on the house all night. And they would put their hand in the window, and they'd play with my hair. And I'd wake up the next morning with mud and leaves in my hair. But they do. And they used to do this when I was outside. I have one he's about 14 foot tall. And he would come up behind me, and I would feel him put his hand on my shoulder. And it wasn't harmful. He would never be mean. Never. He's just a sweetheart. He would be if somebody was trying to hurt somebody he cared about, but he would come up and put his shoulder or his hand on my shoulder, and I could feel the pressure. I could feel where he grabbed it, and then I'd turn around, and there's nobody there. A lot of people that are in this field of research have experienced that.
So the bending of light, though, only explains the invisibility. What about the disappearing tracks? What about the ability to walk through gravel without making a sound? What about the unique attributes of them?
I can tell you that most people don't believe it. I mean, telling you what we've learned that it is from them and getting other people to believe it are two different things. Number one, they can levitate. So if they also are in a spirit form opposed to a physical form, you're not going to see a lot of the footsteps, whether it be in the gravel. And many people have acknowledged this as well. I had a female that she would go down and walk to the food bucket, and then I've watched her do this, and then leave, and she would take a branch with leaves, and she would sweep behind her as she went. So you never got tracks. But it's very common to find a footprint here, a footprint there. When they're cloaked, they can still leave prints. When I was in Michigan, I would go and walk out in the woods, and I would look next to me, and I would be seeing footprints made in the snow as I was walking. Or if it was fall time and the leaves were down, and I would be walking, and I would hear the footprints being crunched. You know, I'm not the only one that's experienced that. Lots of them. Pat has.
So
They've gone up
being
and touched
cloaked is
them.
different than being astral. I think that's what you called it, Pat. The ability to pass
Astral
through matter,
projection.
going fully
Well,
astral project.
astral projection is they're in one spot and then they can go in spirit form somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean,
Like inside your house, or
But they can displace
Yeah.
matter and bring things inside your house without actually having to open the door, correct?
oh, absolutely. I
Mhm.
mean, we get up and we find white rock, branches. I know when I was in Michigan, I was forever getting branches from trees that were not Michigan trees.
Right.
You know, my son was sick one day, and I had walked out in the woods to go take food out, and I was with Igor and a friend, and we walked out there, and my son was he had bronchitis at the time, and he was laying in my bed watching TV, and he had his cell phone, and I said, you know, I'm going to be on the property. If you need me, all you do is call, and I will come back to the house. And he called me, and he's like, Mom, were you just in here? And I said, no, I'm out in the woods. Why? Do you need me to come in? And he said, I heard something open the front door. And he said, I heard something walking. So I got out of bed, and he said, I came out in the living room, and he said, I saw something large and white dart out that front door. And he went over to the door, and there was dirty prints on the ground, and there was a white rock. So, and I knew exactly who had done it. So I asked him, I said, what were you doing? And he said, you were outside. He said, I was checking to make sure he was okay. You know, I mean, they're very compassionate. But yeah, I mean, they don't have to, and people say, well, I've got my doors locked. Good luck with that. Let me know how that works, because it's never worked for me. You know, we first moved in here, and our refrigerator is black.
Well,
because the
now wait a
appliances
second,
that were left
Robin.
in-
Can you? What if someone's uncomfortable with this idea? Let's say you're a young woman that lives, you know, in a cabin in the woods,
Well,
and you don't want this phenomena to come inside. Can you set boundaries?
absolutely. And depending on the individual is whether or not it works. I have not had a problem per se. I don't think Pat has ever noticed a problem with it either. Pretty much, if you're not ill-intended, if you are pure of heart, I have no problem with people and things and beings coming in and out. But if you are ill-intended, I fight back, and you're not tolerated. You know, I move good energy, and the bad things do not like it when you move back good energy. And anybody can do it. I'm not any special thing. Trust me. Anybody can do it. You just have to know how. And that's one of the things I do is I work with people on how to move their own energy to protect themselves in various things. The good ones are normally pretty respectful. Not always, but you know, it depends. Again, it's individualized. It's just like our people. We have people that if they see a sign that says don't trespass, they respect it, they don't trespass. Then you have others that say, so what? Nobody's walking, nobody's looking. I'm going to do it anyway. So it boils down to the individual.
Right, but there's
You know, we had a
something, I mean,
problem-
their attributes are so different than ours, given just a few of the things that we've talked about here. So the idea that they are just like us falls short at that point there, doesn't it? That they have these other physical attributes.
They always told me, yeah, they always tell me, we're just like you, only different. Okay, so I mean, it's kind of like a contradiction.
Right.
They are like us in the fact that they are a people. They are not our kind of people, but they are nonetheless a people. They have human lineage. They are a people. They have language. They have an alphabet. They can write. I know several people that interact with them through writing. You know, they'll put a notepad out and put things. Pat himself, he took their alphabet and he put welcome friends using their alphabet. And the next day, you could clearly see where they tried to write something back on it.
Right.
You know, what people need to realize is their ways are not ours. We say things to mean a certain way. It is not interpreted by them the same way because their ways are not ours and vice versa. They don't necessarily understand why we do. It's like time. They have no idea what in the heck this thing time is because that's something that we created. They don't go by times.
Do you know, Pat or Robin, whether or not they have been, now this may be a touchy subject, have they been captured and are they actively being studied by our government?
Yeah.
110 billion %.
They
They're now,
through MindSpeak, I've had them being electrocuted. I mean, it's in my mind, and they're asking for help. They're in these underground bases, and they're being studied and tortured, electrocuted. Forest fires have started to kill them. I mean, the whole
implants
9
shot
yards.
from helicopters into them so they can track them.
Yeah.
They're breeding them with things that they shouldn't be breeding them through. Yeah, but this is an underground government. This isn't, what most people have to deal with.
Okay, so but now how does this happen since they have these attributes to elude us? How do we have something over them in order to even capture them?
I know they have some type of a gun that when they shoot this charge at them, if they're cloaked, it drains the energy from them and then they can't cloak. They have ways to do it. And it does help them that they have the attributes they have.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to more than one security guard that was at a facility where they had captured one and had it in a cage and it cloaked and they literally thought it escaped the cage. And they were trying to figure out how in the world this thing had gotten out of there, and they actually opened the door to check it out. And of course it went out because it was cloaked. And then as it was running down the hall, it uncloaked and people saw it and went out a plate glass window and was gone. So, I mean, that happens. They also will sedate them and keep them drugged because while they're drugged and groggy, they can't do really, what they normally would do. I mean, they change their vibration. When they change their vibration, it helps them to cloak. It helps them to bend the light. It helps them to do a million different paranormal abilities that they have. And if they can keep them doped up enough, that, that helps to counteract it. But I mean, the government at one time, and this is my own opinion, from what I was able to find out and what Pat's been able to find out, let's create a super army. They did the same thing with the dogmen. It's not limited to the Bigfoot, or, we'll implant them with this and we'll create this super army with other species in them.
Right, a chimera army. Mm-hmm. So earlier you said when we were talking about the nest and how they don't need a nest or a stick structure like that, you said that, trust me, they don't need that. So as far as their parallel...
No, I'm talking about these little teepees. They use the nest. The nest they use, it's waterproof, it's weatherproof, and that's what they use, just like we use a house.
But do they go somewhere else, Robin? Do they have another place that they go? Are they in a different realm when they go through these
at times, absolutely.
portals?
At times, definitely. We have some that primarily are in Texas, and every now and then they come down here and visit. I mean, absolutely. They go through portals.
They've got Michigan and
come
Indiana.
Back and forth. Yeah.
Is it do they go to a different place on Earth, or are they part of a different ecosystem?
They can go to different dimensions. I mean, they're multi-dimensional. I mean, I know how crazy it sounds. Trust me, I've had well over 50 years to have to come to terms with all of it. So I get it when everybody says, "Oh, look she's batshit crazy." I don't even care anymore because, like you said, I don't claim to be an expert, but I do know what they've told me. I know what they've taught me. I know what I've seen.
Right. It's liberating to speak the truth, isn't it? even though it's batshit crazy.
Yeah, I'm 56 now, although I can't believe I'm 56, but it took me probably 20 years to get to the point where I said, you know what? I'm tired of being quiet. I'm tired of pretending, that this is not normal because this is my normal.
Right.
And I always told everybody, if I'm so crazy, why is this the only aspect of my life I'm crazy? The rest of the time, I'm a mom. I'm a homeroom mom. I help with the kids' schools. I work with the animals. At one point, I worked at a vet. And my ex-husband, he thought I was perfectly sane until I went to divorce him. And then all of a sudden it was, let me call social services and tell them that you're crazy because you talked to Bigfoot. And I'm like, okay. They came out, did an interview on me, did an interview on the kids. And I said, so what's the deal? And they said, we can't find anything wrong. Like, we don't have that experience, but you guys all seem pretty sane to me. So I got hold of my divorce lawyer and I said, I'm going to go in and get checked out. And he said, well, you don't have to. And I said, no, but I want to. I mean, if I'm crazy, obviously I need help.
Right.
And I went in and I met with I've had 2 different psychiatrists talk to me, and both of them said there's a damn thing wrong with me. In fact, once I showed them my pictures, they were like all on board. And I actually had my doctor at one point in time in Michigan. He was he was retiring, and because he wanted to walk the Appalachian Trail. And I said, okay, there's certain points in there you want to be careful, because there are some groups up there that are not pleasant. And they're not the only thing that's up there that's not pleasant. And, you know, I want you to be careful. And if this is what happens, you need to put me on 911, you know, call me and let me see what I can help you with. And he's like, okay. And he called me before he left, and he said, I want to make sure that I had the right number, because I may have to call you. And I'm like, okay. But, you know, I mean, I get people that I'm sure have their own opinions that I don't really care about. But the people that know me, the people that I have a lot of contact with, as well as Pat, know we're as legit as it gets. You know, who wants to make this stuff up?
Right, but it doesn't just stop at Bigfoot. You have the ET phenomena as well, correct?
Yeah. I have all the cryptids. I have the ETs. It was funny because I was up at the barnyard in South Columbia, which is a giant flea market. And I was up there Saturday, and there was somebody up there in a lizard man costume because of Halloween. And he was going on about, you know, he's really fascinated with lizard man and everything. And I said, you know, they're real, right? And he started laughing, and he said, really? I said, you know, they're real. And it wasn't him. It was somebody he was talking to. And I said, well, you know, these things are real. And the lady was cracking up. And I said, let me show you something. So I showed him the picture. And she just looked at me. She went, oh, my God. Where did you get that? I said, I took it off my back porch. You know, I did. Wow. I took it off the back porch.
Wow.
But again, I haven't had, it's very peaceful here. I do a lot of energy work here. I'm not saying we can't get anything bad that comes in, but it's generally, you know, we run it out of here pretty quick if it does. It's pretty peaceful. With as many crazy things that we have that come here, for the most part, we don't have any issues. Like, they were all out there a couple of weeks ago, and we had a little bit of everything going on out there. My woods just was like erupting, but they're all getting along.
Now, are you an abductee? Are you an abductee, Robin?
Yeah, my first time I was abducted, I was just under 4.
Now, would you call yourself an abductee?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that has happened on and off through my whole life. I don't ever really look at it like that. I probably should. It's just who I am. Pat's been
what do you mean by
before.
You probably should?
Well, you know, I had somebody ask me that one time. They said, well, you're an abductee, aren't you? And I said, you know what? I never really thought about it, but as many times as I've been taken, I guess, yeah. It makes me an abductee. Pat didn't realize for a long time that he had been abducted. And, you know, we were talking one day, and I said, well, you know, you got taken, you were 9, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And we later found out that's exactly what happened. I had too much information for it not to be legit. And then we did find out later on, and he started getting memories back and flashbacks. And yeah.
Well, what kind of situation was that, Pat?
Well, as kids, we would go down. There's like a railroad track, and we would go down. This is behind. It's like in the woods, and we would walk the tracks. And I remember seeing the craft above. I remember looking up, seeing it, and I actually, and this is weird, but I actually hear myself as a kid say, leave me alone. And I've heard it, you know, like I was in just dream state or something, and I heard it again, and it's just kind of weird hearing yourself when you're a kid say that.
Yeah.
They put implants in me, and I think they put it in my head or implant in my head.
Do you have a memory of that procedure?
Yeah, I remember being on the table. Remember them coming up and reaching and messing with my head.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you a strange question here, Pat. Do you have a prior military background at all, or a first responder
Yeah, I was in the
background?
army a couple. In the army a couple years.
Was that before or after the implant?
Oh, it was after. Yeah.
Uh-huh. But have you had contact after your service?
Uh, oh,
Contact
like
with the military or the ETs?
Well, have you had contact with the ET phenomena after your military service?
no.
No.
I don't remember anything.
Mm-hmm.
Until
But
you met me.
yeah, no. But before,
I need to come with
before
a warning label.
yeah, I know. Before I met anyone, I've always had like these things happen. You know, I think I talked about before, like, I'll be in a store and, I'll know darn well that there's somebody from work in the store. It's really weird. It's just like almost like an obsession. And sure enough, there's somebody that is in the store. I mean, and then this is out of the clear blue, but this is what I think it brings it home for me is, and I realized it later, but this is before I even met anybody out of this stuff was I'd always had this thing about if I looked at a picture, and I think they were teaching me, but look at a picture, and I knew there was an energy to that picture. I knew it. I had this crazy thing. I used to tell my son, I said, well, and there's energy in that picture, and they look at me like I'm crazy or something. But there is. If you
Everything
look
has
at the
an energy
picture,
signature.
everything has. Okay. Everything has an energy signature. You look at a picture,
Mm-hmm.
and you see a Bigfoot in that picture, and you want to talk to him, you'll talk to him.
What do you mean by that, Pat?
You look into the picture,
Mm-hmm.
and then basically what happens when I look in that picture, I feel connection. And then a lot of times I'll see what they're doing, or they'll ask me, says, what do you want? Or who are you? Then after a while, they'll know who I am. And then you start talking with them. If it's like a name, okay? Like some of the foots in Indiana, I'll go ahead and I'll think a name. And then basically they respond telepathically in seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with the telepathy and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
it's the gateway to the universe. I mean,
I want to say one thing while Pat's talking about the telepathy. Pat and I have certain people, not Bigfoots, but regular people that we talk to. We verify everything. I don't want anybody to think for a minute that just because we hear it, we think it's law. We don't. Okay. Number one, things will lie to you. Other things will be good. Other things won't. We verify the crap out of everything. Like if Pat gets a message, he'll say, okay, you ask him, make sure it's the same that I got. And I'll say, okay, don't tell me what it is. Or we'll call a dear friend of ours that the three of us work together, and say, okay, you asked too. And if we don't get all of us on the same page, either something's messing with us, which means we're not talking to it anymore, or we don't act on it. Because we verify things. You have to get it right.
See,
I wanted to insert that in there because I don't want people to think that we walk around and say, oh, well, he said this. How do you know that's what he said? Well, we verify it. We verify everything, especially if it's something of importance that they need done. We will verify that 12 different ways from Sunday.
Well, I mean, this is where the subject matter really gets interesting, because how do you remain objective when you have something like this so close to, like, a real life genie in a bottle that's actually, granting communication with you here?
Mhm.
It's very seductive, and you could get misled very easily. I've talked about
This is
this at
why.
length, about how people get misled by ego, that they are somehow the gatekeepers
Yeah,
for
you can't
information.
have an ego in this. If you have an ego, that is the quickest way for you to get misinformation and for the wrong things to talk to you, because that's what happens. And you just, Pat and I make sure we're always checking each other to make sure that we've got it
Hmm.
right. And we didn't mishear something or whatever, or we both understood, because their meanings are different from ours. So we have to make sure we get it right. If we're just having a conversation with them, like, will you come outside or this, or if we hollered and say, okay, who's out there today? And they answer,
Hmm.
that's one thing. But if it's anything of seriousness, if it's anything with a lot of information, we verify it. And I'll tell you what, Pat is one of the best telepathic mind speakers I've ever worked with. I tell that to everybody because it's the God's honest truth. He's phenomenal. And we rely on each other. I've done it my whole life. I think he probably did it even before he knew he was doing it, but he's phenomenal at it. But as good as we may be, and other people that we work with may be, we can get it wrong. I mean, anybody can. So this is verify the hell out of everything. If you want to make sure, that's the only way you're going to know if you're getting it right.
Right. Will
And
they
read
give
the
you
energy.
information, Pat, about events to come?
No, I've never gotten anything like for, future events and stuff like that. I mean, I've got a guide, and I talk to him, on a regular basis, and I'll ask him stuff, and he always answers, and he'll always tell me. If he can't say something, he'll tell me. If he wants to give me information, he'll give me information.
Hmm.
But like you're talking about telepathy and stuff, and finding
Right.
the wrong, you're dealing with the wrong person or entity or something like that. I mean, both of us you can usually feel deception. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Right.
it's kind of subtle in a way, but it's like, it's hard to describe, but you can feel it, and you know that they're not being truthful, and they're just trying to deceive you. And that we were talking about dream state, and that is just a whole other thing of I guess communication and stuff like that.
Yeah, a
And
lot
I
of
mean, is that as
say that's
close
how
as
they
you can get
contacted
to
Purge.
how they interact, Robin? As far as the dream state and communication, now you've entered into your astral body. You're in your spirit form at that point. Is that as close as you can
I
get
think
to
that,
interacting with them?
I mean, I think the best way I can put it is, a lot of people, not everybody, obviously, a lot of people, their first contact with them is in dream state. And that happens for a couple of reasons. Okay. They want to make sure that you can handle it. If you can't handle it when you're asleep, you certainly can't handle it when you're awake. It's safe for them. Very few people take guns with them to dream state. And so it's a protection thing for them. Some of them, may not be allowed through their clan to have contact with you, but they want you to know they're there, or they might be there. I know certain ones that have contacted certain people that were in crisis, and they were just offering comfort, and they will come to you in dream state. Different things that they'll want done that are major, not always, but a couple of times they've come to us in dream state. I had one show come to me in a dream state, and I mean, people need to realize dream state is every bit as real as when you're awake. Okay, it may be called dream state, but it's very real.
It's kind of, if you ever seen the Matrix movies, it's kind of like that. Other to the fact that if you get injured or whatever in dream state, you're going to be injured in the non-dream state.
Wait till you have to go to the hospital with a broken arm and they say, how'd you break your arm? Well, gee, I was in this battle with a bunch of Bigfoots there, and I remember the one grabbing my arm. I felt a break, a lot of pain, and then I woke up, and now I have a broken arm. You know, so you take that, you go to the hospital, and you say, oh, I fell down the steps.
Right.
You know, what are you going to do?
Well, yeah, you got to be careful with that.
Bloody
Otherwise
nose,
they'll start.
busted lip.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, and like I said, there's a lot more people than people realize that go through it. I get contacted often, so does Pat, with people that have said, you know, I was sleeping and I had this vivid dream and there was a Bigfoot in it, that it felt so real. And I'll be the first one to stand up and say, because it was, you know, it's a matter of, they can find out how you're going to react to them.
There's a zone, I call it the zone, and it's in between sleep and awake. And I've heard, I'll be asleep in the bedroom and stuff, and I'll hear it. Somebody calls my name. I can hear the voice like crystal clear, like you're talking to me now. And then I'll wake up. It happens so much. It's been happening a lot, you know.
But they can imitate your voice. I mean, they can imitate.
Yeah, remember yesterday?
Oh, yeah.
They imitated your voice.
I know, and he called me, he hollered to me, and he said, you know, did you just call me? And I said, no, I didn't say a thing. Pretty soon, did you just call me? And I'm like, no, I haven't called you. And he's like, well, somebody's calling, and it sounds like you.
It's exactly her voice.
Right.
It got so bad with the ones in Michigan where they could imitate everybody's voices that I told you have to understand, my kids grew up with these things around them. Not so much my older 5, they were always around, but I didn't make a point of the kids really knowing it a lot. They knew it a little, but not a lot. My younger 3 children, because I had 8 children, that was a constant. They were there all the time with them. You know, I mean, they'd look outside, they'd be walking around. But, and my granddaughter, I have a granddaughter, and when she was 4.5, which she's a teenager now, she would sit outside and she would roll a rock into the woods and they'd roll it back to her and they'd play back and forth. For the longest time, she thought they were the chipmunks from Melvin and the Chipmunks. But she said, Grandma, your chipmunks are so much bigger than the ones in the movies. You know, and God love her, she's just starting to learn to mind speak.
We blame a lot of
so
things on the chipmunks out here too,
Yeah.
Chipmunks and the Stellar Jays get a lot of blame.
But, you know, my kids were so used to it. So what do? You know, you explain it and you try to make it as easy for them to comprehend, but it doesn't, it's hard. I mean, it's hard growing up with a mom that has all these Bigfoots running around and dogmen and, you know, seeing them all the time. My daughter would play her clarinet and they would come out to see her because she was playing the music.
I would imagine that you've talked about it, or maybe it's in process, or maybe it's out and I don't know about it. But Pat, Robin, have you decided at all to write your story down, or is there something else in the works?
I have been asked that for years. In fact, a friend of ours, who's a wonderful woman, offered to ghostwrite it for me because she specializes in journalism. I'm not going to say it won't ever happen. If I ever have 5 minutes of time, it probably will. I feel like at some point, Pat and I need to write it down because that's another thing. They can take your memories away just as quick as you get them. And that's normal. And I always tell everybody, you know what you know now, but can you imagine what they've taken away so that you don't know? And they do that for a lot of reasons, but I'm not going to say it won't happen. Pat and I have talked about it before, and I think there's probably valuable information there that maybe make it easier for somebody. When all this happened to me, I didn't have anybody to go to.
Right.
I didn't have anybody to download all what I was experiencing and say, okay, you're not crazy. This is normal. This isn't normal. Don't do this. Do this. I didn't have that. Pat didn't have that.
Right. Have you been taking copious notes, Robin, along the way?
I did, and every time I had it for years, I did, and all my notepads would be then taken away. And who's got them now? I don't know.
I tried to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, I had a phone, and you download those little journals and stuff. And the thing is the frequency of all the stuff that happens. It just got to be too much. You had your life to go, and then all this stuff would be going on, and there would be just too much to put out. I just said, well, forget it. I'm not going to do it. There's just too much stuff happening.
Well, I mean, I really encourage you
to.
I mean, it's a lot of work. I encourage you to do the work, though, because there's not too many stories like yours out there, not with the breadth of knowledge that you both have.
Our own memory, we need to write it down. And I tell people this a lot that I work with. They'll call me and they'll say, this happened in dream state, or this happened today. And I'm like, for the love of God, write it down, because you don't know how long they're going to let you have that memory. If you'll be allowed to keep it, if you'll not be allowed to, write it down. Or, Pat and I get contacted all the time. Will you find out the name of the Bigfoot that's around me? And so we'll get the name or whatever. And I'm like, number one, I don't even remember human names well. I'm horrible at it. So I always tell everybody, if I give them a name, write it down, because if you ask me tomorrow, I won't remember. And if I ask them again, sometimes they get indignant and said, we've already told you.
Well, I believe that, like, dream state, they teach you. But the thing is what's really frustrating about dream state is, and I've talked to Robin about this before, if they're going to teach you something, aren't you supposed to know what they're teaching and, remember it? And you never remember it. And you're sitting there.
But it ends up being locked. It's locked in your mind. And when you need it, it comes out.
Yeah, exactly. I know they've been doing that to me when I'm asleep. I know they have. I feel it.
They gave me a download the other day, and I don't know what they gave me, but I mean, I literally was so dizzy, I could not walk for over 24 hours. Like, I would lay on the bed, and it felt like the bed was just twisting around in a tilt-a-whirl. And I mean, I told Pat, I'm like, this is crazy. And so he said to him, I asked him what was going on, and they said, don't worry, it'll be okay. We won't let anything hurt you. And I'm like, I want details, which they never give. And Pat said something to him, and they said, she has to have this. It's a download. She's got to have it. She's going to need it. And I'm like, can I find out what it is? No, forever. When the time is right, you will know. Like, that will be engraved on my headstone.
But my last question to you, Robin and Pat, is regarding, I alluded to it earlier, but regarding the future. I mean, we live in interesting times, let's face it. And I'm sure you've had questions regarding the times that we live in. Has there been any insight for humanity regarding these interesting times, and can you talk about them?
Believe it or not, I don't usually sit down and say, okay, what's going to happen with our world? Because my world is so crazy all the time. I don't even get to that point. I will say this. They are concerned. We are destroying this earth. This earth is supposed to be a place for us all to live. And there's a lot going on. We are slowly but surely killing this planet. And unfortunately, we're killing everything else that's on this planet too. Okay. They're here. They're not going anywhere. Their world is being destroyed by us. Our actions affect everything, whether it's an animal outside, whether it's a human hybrid, no matter what it is, we are destroying it, and we aren't waking up to this fact. And then you have another aspect, because when it comes to the ETs, there's good ETs, which are wonderful, but there's also bad. They feed on negative energy. Now, right now, the Foots have always said that there will be a battle fought on this plane, where it will be all different dimensions will come together. All these other beings from different dimensions will come and fight this battle out on this plane. And they claim it started, 2 or 3 years ago, or if not more. I mean, I'm just guessing, but it's been going on for a while. But if you notice, our world is getting more negative all the time. It's getting less safe on this planet because of what our type humans are doing. And This is just a theory. I have nothing to back it up. I'll be the first to say that. But negative energy attracts negative beings. Okay, whether it's an ET, and no, ETs, a lot of people think they're demonic. I don't share that view. I've come up against demonic entities before, and an ET is not it. Maybe other people feel differently. I respect that, but that's my own opinion. But with all the dark energy we are creating ourselves, with all the hate, with all these different things going on, it attracts these things, and they basically will blow up your world. And I don't mean that figuratively or literally. I'm talking about emotionally, your lives, whatever. They will create you to fight with people because all that dark energy they feed off of.
Have you
all
ever
the bad
noticed-
things feed off of it. And right now, we are at a point where we are nothing but a buffet.
Well, I know, but have you ever noticed if you look back in time, 1930s and way back when, not much crime, but it seems to be getting worse. Do you see what I'm saying? Well, I mean, if you look at, and the Foots have told me this, is what's happening is the governments of the world, they're opening these portals. They do it. You got CERN and stuff like that. They're
They were
actually
very concerned
letting
about
this
that.
stuff in. They're the ones that are letting all this bad stuff in, and everything is going to hell in a handbasket.
You have
And she's
researchers
right,
right
it's the
now.
buffet.
Yeah, you have researchers right now that are actively being harassed and tormented by certain ETs that were allowed on this planet. And they make these researchers think that they're going to kill them. And they'll ask permission. In fact, I did a show with Duke Sullivan about it. And it was really awful because during the show, these things were in my head. I ended up sounding like a village idiot because I kept repeating things, but I had these things that we were discussing in my mind trying to harass me at the same time. But, there's so many things that are being let on this planet. And Pat makes a really valid point about CERN. But, we are the worst of the worst. I'm sorry. I believe that we have a lot of wonderful, beautiful souls on this planet, but we have a lot of evil out here too. And we are letting things here. We are creating things.
Yep.
We are making it too
Exactly.
damn easy to be attacked. And the more these negative things are here, the more fighting we're going to carry on in our own world. And the Foots are concerned. They're concerned about Gaia. They're concerned, all these things because we are destroying it. And we don't learn. We don't listen.
But their interests aren't just in the ecosystem.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Primarily, they want two things. They want to be able to live their lives in peace.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want they don't want their families jeopardized. They don't want their families hunted and killed like they're a lab rat.
Right.
And I'm sorry, but that's basic. I don't care if you're a human or an animal. That's basic needs.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen a lot of people that put out petitions. I was asked to help with one of them, and I declined it, not because I didn't want them protected, but it was the manner that it was being done in. And these people were very well intended. They were all wonderful, beautiful souls. But you cannot have a protection act giving them our rights because they don't understand them, nor do they want them. They have their own culture. They have their own way of life. You cannot go up to them and say, okay, look, these are our property lines. They don't understand that. They understand territories, vast territories. They don't understand property lines. They can't go pay taxes. They're not going to go get a job. Our ways are not theirs. And this is why there's so much conflict. You have two sets. You have the one that it's a novelty to see if we can bag one because it's going to be really cool and they're going to be the next big discovery. And then you have the other set that is just, if I see them because they're scary looking, I'm blowing their head off. Right. I cannot tell you how many people contact myself, and I know Pat gets it as well. And, I had this terrifying incident and it was scary and it was terrifying and, it was a crazy, mean Bigfoot. And I'm like, okay, what did it do?
I saw it.
Right.
I saw
That's
it.
all it took. That's all it took.
And I said, well, yeah, I'm not talking about the ones that they do the wall of fear where they put the fear in you. They project that wall of fear in you. But I'm talking about just a regular, everyday Bigfoot. People will go out in the woods And if there's one out there, well, it could be hunting, it could be with their family, it could have a child nearby, but it doesn't want you in that area. So it will take a rock or whatever, and it'll throw it at you. People consider that an act of aggression, an act of fighting. That's a crock of crap. Okay, if they hit you with it, that's fighting. That's acts of aggression. If they're just throwing it towards you and it's landing near you,
right,
that's telling you, hey, you don't need to be here. You've gotten too close. You're now in my home. Back off. They do not miss. If they want to hit you, you're hit. If they want you dead, there is nowhere on God's green acre you're going to go and not end up dead. Okay? So if they're waving their hands at you, that means they're trying to get you to leave.
yeah,
If they throw a rock and it misses you, they want you to go. But
You've
people
gotten too close.
right,
yeah, you've gotten too close. But people take that and it's like, let's go get guys with guns and go blast their butts because that was an act of aggression. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Not in their culture, not in their ways.
right,
Now, if, there's certain things that they'll do that can be aggressive, yes, because they're not all nice. But
sure,
there's that miscommunication. And so when
Right.
you do the protection laws for them, you have to understand that they are never going to follow those laws. They don't understand. They have laws. They have their own laws. And I'm going to, just real quick, I mean, this is where the misconceptions come. When I was in Michigan, I lived in a manufactured home, and we had the skirting around the bottom of the house. They had started taking and peeling back the skirting on the one end of the house because they would go under the house and then they would knock on the floor. And I would sit up above them and I'd knock back, and then I'd go somewhere else in the house and knock down, and they would go and they'd follow me, and we'd go all around the house. It was like a game. And we would do this for hours at a time. Or if I went outside, I could knock on the skirting and then I'd move and they'd follow me. They would be underneath the trailer and I would go around. And it was a game. But they had gotten to the point where they were taking the skirting, and it was like the one end of the house was almost no skirting left. And on the back under my bedroom, they had just removed the skirting. I don't even know where they took it. And so I kept trying to tell them, will you please quit? Michigan winters, it gets cold under there. I need that skirting up. And I thought, the X's mean stay out, At the time, I didn't realize it was only certain X's meant stay out. So I went and I put an X outside of the hole where they would go in and out, and I tacked it up, the siding or the skirting up, and I put a small X on the ground. Because at that time, which was years ago, I thought that meant stay out. And I heard chuckling when I did it, but nobody said anything. I get up the next morning, the entire skirt in the night was awful. They were all under there. I don't know if they were like partying under there or what, but it was a mess. All night long, they were so loud. And I got up the next morning, all the skirting's pulled, and I'm like, what in the world? So I said to the one I'm really close to, I said, do you want to tell me why, when I put that there in your own language, telling you that I didn't want you in there, everybody went in there anyway? And he's laughing. He thinks it's funny. And he said, because you did a ground X. And I said, so? Ground X means welcome. So basically, I invited everybody under the house, which is why I got no
okay.
sleep. So
I didn't know that.
if
So
you have
does that
if you have an
go for all
upright-
Bigfoot, a ground X?
What they do is there is a generalization. It's a form of communication to a degree. There's standard things that they all use, but then each clan that I've noticed, this is my own experiences, they will kind of customize things, if you will, so that only their clan members know and other ones don't. But yet there are a lot of structures that are just primarily messages to each other and to the other
Right.
clans that, they all understand. Now I have mini pigs. I have 3. And I have one that is consistent with, I'm going to go through every fence you have. I'm going to go run around the backyard. Then I'll go to the garage so you can let me in the garage and I'll be happy. Because they're house pigs. They have their own room out. Well, now they're out in the garage. They used to be in the house. And so he would go to the front of the garage door. I'd open the big garage door and he'd come back in. He got out one day and he was out in the backyard and then he was gone. And I thought, oh my God, he's never left the yard. I was frantic. My animals are my kids. And so I asked the Foots, I said, find him and bring him back because I don't want anything to eat him out there. And they said, don't worry. We'll have him back. I said, okay. And about 45 minutes later, I walked outside to see if I could see him. And I walked by the front of the garage, and here is this ground X in front of the garage at the exact spot that he normally comes in. and there were sticks on the ground pointing to that X leading over there from the side of the garage that he normally came up on. And I said, you guys, I said, who made this? And they said, we did. And I said, for why? I said, what did you do that for? I said, so that he would know this is welcome. This is where you go in at. And it was not 15 minutes later, and here he comes a trotting, running like somebody was chasing his little butt all the way up the side of the garage, and he went right in where the X was and right inside.
We all the way home.
Yep. So they brought his little happy little trotting butt back a couple times.
Robin and Pat Mccray have been my guest, and we have a lot more to get to down the road here. So this will be chapter 1 of another series, because we haven't really even gone to the full depths of probably the other stuff involving the dogmen, the lizardmen, the abduction or visitations, and the implications of that. But I appreciate both of you guys coming on the air and talking.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pat, for help setting this up.
Oh, no problem. Thank you very much.
All right, part 2 of Chalky White Handprints. I should have called it powdered sugar white handprints, but who would have ever thunk it? So that's their speculation, and boy, you got a lot of information to digest there. And I hope to talk to them again about it. And what a surprise as far as Robin's background. I had no idea how involved she was with the inside scoop and the Melba Ketchum DNA study. Speaking of that, I'm going to be spending some time this week with guest Rich Germeau out at his home doing a one-on-one with Rich. And then I will be getting ready to post that sometime, either the next episode, 103 or 104, not quite sure yet. And then we're moving on into the December 1st non-member, non-Patreon episode. So those will be going back up according to seasons. Season 1, Volume 1, December 1st for the general public. And then also this November 17th, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time will be my conversation with Ira Wolfnesen again at the Strange Brow Radio Facebook live event space. That's 7 p.m., a live event with Ira Wolfnesen and abductee Bill from Don't F With Another Man's Inc. will also be on with us. 2 abductees and maybe some explanations about what's going on here. And so you don't want to miss that because, well, I guess as patron members, you can miss it because I'm going to post the link up for patron members and nobody else. So if you want to ask questions and be a part of the show, join us for the live Zoom link at Facebook, and we'd be happy to have you on the show with us. Again, 7 p.m. this Tuesday, November 17th, and should be a good time. All right, don't forget our sponsor again, Feral by Aaron, ERYN, at Etsy.com. Holiday Christmas is around the corner. You'll get down to it at Etsy. All your alchemy sound tool needs are there. All right, that's it for me. Thanks again, patrons, and I will see you next week. If not, I will see you in the trees.